Here we go. Can we please welcome the wonderful Beverly Harling to the Blah 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 stage, who's going to tell us about ploughing the salt sea, the happy return.
Oh, it's a lovely picture.
I watched as he left the shore from Rockanaw Beach. Seagulls rising, tumbling as he sailed with a fishing fleet. His cap pushed back, the wind was fine as he waved from the stern. And my brother went a fishing aboard the Happy Return. It was later in the wash house as I larded up my suds. Whispers of a vanishing boat made a coldness run in my blood. Off Rye Harbour a boat was seen when the harbour master turned. And a moment later when he looked, there was no happy return. I stared into my water and the tan frog in my tub. I saw the salt steal the lather as I tried in vain to scrub. The lifeboat launched and trawled the spot where my brother, a fisherman born, became a mystery of the sea, along with a happy return. In March 1940, a newspaper story shocked the people of Hastings. A fishing boat called the Happy Return completely vanished without a trace. My name is Beverly Harling and I'm a singer and a composer, and I would like to take you on a trip around Hastings and its surrounding area via some true stories. First, I'd like to introduce you to my mum and dad. This is Jim and Jan Harling on their wedding day in Christchurch in Orr Village in the 1960s. I love how my mum always wore the flattest shoes so that she wouldn't tower over my dad too much. At the start of this year, I was feeling completely creatively stuck. My dad had just been diagnosed with mixed dementia and Alzheimer's. And I was haunted by the enigma of my mum. She was a very secretive person and never spoke about her parents or family. And as a result, I didn't even know what my own grandparents' names were. After she died, because of the mystery of her family, I was left with holes in my understanding of who I am and where I belong. This led me to begin working with Mo Cohen, a transformational creative coach. He encouraged me to look deeper into some of my family stories. I did this by spending time recording some of my dad's early memories of life with my mum. I did some family tree research, I went on genealogy sites, I looked at newspaper articles, and I got in contact with local museums. In order to release myself from the grip of the influence of these stories, I began creating music and writings influenced by traditional folk music, and with Mo supporting me throughout the whole process. Now 6 long weeks had passed me by when Herbert Hovenden saw, floating on the ranges of Lid, a body that he pulled to shore. A fine young man on the beach he lay, his body all sea-worn, but no sign of that lugger My sheets they rippled across the stones as I laid them out to dry. The May breeze caught hold of one, and it soared up to the sky. And there my father softly stood, his face all forlorn, for he'd seen his son on the coroner's slab, and Louis was no more. Through my research, I found out that my mum had lost her mum to cancer when she was just 8 years old. Her father died a year later, leaving her orphaned at the age of 9. She was then fostered until she got married to my dad. This was a photo that I'd never seen before of my mum with her eldest brother Derek. She had 3 brothers, but I only knew about one of them. And now I'd really like to introduce you to my grandpa. In my research, I found 2 areas particularly difficult to find evidence of. The first was if you were a quietly law-abiding citizen. And the second was if you were a woman. Thankfully, my grandfather was neither of these. So please, can we have a drum roll? Meet Mr. George Victor Hutchinson. He was involved in various scurrilous crimes, including assaulting policemen, driving dangerously, car crashes, drunkenness, violence, and my personal favourite, larceny by trick, where he tried to flog a motorbike that he didn't even own by impersonating a door-to-door banana salesman. I'll leave that one to your imagination. After his wife died, he left his kids to fend for themselves and shacked up with a Mrs. Hum, the landlady, exactly, that's what I said, landlady of the Fortunes of War pub in the Halton area in Hastings. She called the police on him several times for being violent. He reported her for having illegal guns on the premises. And predictably, he came to a very sticky end in the pub from taking an overdose of Sonoril tablets, which caused butobarbitone poisoning. So that's my grandpa. Now I'd like to introduce you to my grandma. Drum roll, please. Elizabeth Jane White.
Oh.
Yeah. You'll notice that she must have been a quiet, law-abiding woman, as no matter how much digging I've done, I've only managed to discover that she was the daughter of Hastings fisherman George White and his wife Ellen. This is George on the left of the photo here, bringing the fish in. This photo was found for me by the Hastings Fishermen's Museum, so I'd never seen this before. His father was another fisherman, also called George White, and he was married to Elizabeth White. So now I'd really like to introduce you to my great-great-grandmother. Can I have a drum roll? Elizabeth White.
Oh.
So I don't have any photos of her, but she must have really been making herself known in the neighbourhood, as I found evidence that she owned 5 boats, 2 net huts, and a house in Tamarisk Steps. She protested in court against the slum clearances in the old town in Hastings, and is one of the only women that I've been able to find in the fishing community that held any ownership rights who wasn't a widow. When I found out about her, I let out a little her name is written on this net hut map from the turn of the century. I don't know if you can see that here. I could probably just use a little thing, couldn't I? But this is her here, Elizabeth White.
Oh, wow.
And she had another one as well. And one of her huts is still in situ next to the Fishermen's Museum. So the Fishermen's Museum was a church and it got converted into a museum. And this is her hut here, on the right hand side. and it's still there. Mr. Kaufman was a diver who came from London town. Dived 3 miles off Rye Harbour and 7 fathoms down. And there he found that blessed boat, the starboard side all blown. For a mine had caught up in the trough of the happy return. Crowds of silent watchers gathered at Rock'n'Roll Road. The flags of the fishing fleet half-mast with a heavy load. The sea has taken one we loved to a nobler rest above. For my dearest brother Louis, there was no happy return. For my dearest brother Louis, there was no happy return. When I found this article, it brought all my research together, as all of my fishing family were listed as the mourners at Louis' funeral. There's a Mr. and Mrs. George White, parents, Mrs. Hutchinson, that's my grandmother, sister, Mrs. Duncan, sister, Mr. Duncan, and Mrs. Lillian, Polly, and Rose White, Mrs. White, Mr. Jumbo White, Mrs. E. White. These are all my family that I never knew about. So since I embarked on my research at the start of the year, I have developed a stronger understanding of my mum, the hardships that she faced and how they shaped the kind of mother that she was to me. She overcame so many things to give me and my siblings a safe and caring environment to grow up in. I've spent good quality time with my dad, visiting important times in his life. This is my dad here at the Ivy Dementia Centre in Hurstmonceux, whisking me around their dance floor. I've begun to choose which inherited stories I want to take with me and which ones I want to leave behind. By discovering the stories of other people in my history and in my town, it's given me new understandings of who I am and where I'm from, and through telling the stories of other people, it's informing my creativity in lots of new ways. This has led me to begin developing a one-woman show supported by the Arts Council called Ploughing, the Salt Sea, which includes many stories that I've discovered and the songs that I've written, including the ballad of A Happy Return, told from the point of view of my grandmother as I try to rewrite her back into history. I've also begun to set up a new business called Life Rights with Mo Cohen to help other creatives to go through the same process that I have. And so, unlike my grandma's poor brother Louis, over the course of investigating my family ancestry, I have fortunately had a very happy return to my life as a creative.
Thank you very much.
And there's just a little extra. I actually found out that the original owner of A Happy Return was, in fact, my great-great-grandmother, Elizabeth White.
Oh, wow.
Hi.